We'd like to welcome you back to Young Climber. We have returned steadily entering the month of December, and you know what we do. We continue to unpack beautiful stories in the Kingdom of Eswatini, stories that continue to inspire us and most importantly enlighten us. On today's episode, we are joined by qualified clinical dietitian Khumbuzile Dlamini. She joins us to unpack her story and basically, you know, unfold all of those titles that she's had in many parts of the country. But other than that, we'd like to welcome Khumbuzile to Young Climber.
Thank you for having me here.
You know, I'm so glad to be talking to you. I've spoken to a set of different professions, but yours is quite special. It, you know, unfolded different titles that even I wasn't aware of, you know. But firstly, what we like to know, obviously, is your background. Khumbuzile, before the dietetics part, you know, Khumbuzile before KSD, just you growing up. Can we talk about your background and when you went to school?
Should I start all the way from primary school?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, let's focus on tertiary. So I studied dietetics at the University of Pretoria. So dietetics was not offered in Eswatini, so I had to leave and go and study outside the country. Okay. And how I actually stumbled on the profession is from my own issues with falling sick because of a poor diet and lifestyle choices. So I developed gut issues at a young age. I think I was about 14 at the time, and I was in and out of doctors' rooms for about 3 years, just trying to figure out what the problem actually is. Until eventually my doctor said, look man, just figure out, go change your diet, go exercise, and this should improve. So then I delved deep, sat down back when we had dial-up internet. Yeah. I did all the research. As I learned, as I did more research, I applied it to my life, and I saw that my symptoms actually got better with time. And then I discovered that this could actually be my profession. And from that day on, I think I was about 16, I decided that I'm going to be a dietitian. Yeah.
And one of the most interesting, you know, stories is obviously your school life. Can we just backtrack to the time you went into, you know, UP and studying? It's dietetics. Yeah. Studying dietetics. How was it for you? How was your schooling experience, you know, transitioning from Eswatini to South Africa, which we usually say it's not too, you know, it's not too different, but it is different. So can you talk about that transition for you?
That was quite the transition, I must say. The first shock I did get when I left and I went to South Africa. I got there and I was told that, oh, sorry, you don't qualify based on my matric results. So that was the first time I faced disappointment. You don't qualify for dietetics because of your matric results, so you need to start with the foundation year.
Oh, yes.
Which, in simple terms, people call it a bridging course. So I started with that. That was my first year of university. It was a foundation year in BSc, then I transferred over into dietetics the following year. But it was quite, the biggest shock I would say was being exposed to Afrikaans. That was,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, because I mean, we're coming from Eswatini, we speak mostly English, and it was English and Siswati. And then now I'm faced with Afrikaans, and at the time at the University of Pretoria, it was also one of the languages of instruction. So there were certain classes that were set up in Afrikaans, and I couldn't understand why are we all not just studying, why aren't all of us studying in English? And then also when I did eventually transfer over into dietetics, which is what I wanted to study, my class was predominantly white students. It was all girls, which was quite nice, but at the same time it was also a lot of white students. I think in my first year only about 6 of us were black out of a class of 40 people. So that was the biggest culture shock for me, that okay, so now I'm more of a minority in this setting. And it did also pose a bit of a challenge, because at the time the University of Pretoria was considered to not be the most transformative university as well. So as a black student, you felt you actually had to work 10 times harder than a white student just to actually pass, let alone excel at that level.
And you know, before we talk about how some of your roles, your previous roles, you know, inform your current practice, can you just talk about the roles themselves? You know, I read up on you and I saw the word medical delegate. I was like, what? You know, I was blown away. It's something that I had never come across myself, but you did serve as a medical delegate for a prestigious company in South Africa. But you did say you were working remotely. Can we just talk about your experience there and your role, your position? What was it about? And what is a medical delegate?
Start by defining the term.
Yeah.
So a medical delegate in simple terms is a sales rep. So with certain products, so I was working for Nestle South Africa, but of course I was in Eswatini reporting to the South African office, which was my dream job for the longest time. That's one of the biggest health and wellness companies in the world. So I was really excited when I started in that position. But basically, as I said, a medical delegate is a sales rep. So you're given a portfolio of products, specifically medical products. So I wasn't working with chocolate or hot chocolate. I didn't have a room full of hot chocolate.
That's what I was thinking.
No.
Yeah.
So I was responsible for the medical products. So Nestle does actually have a medical, what they call a health sciences side. So I was responsible for marketing the medical products to our healthcare professionals. So specifically, I worked with the doctors within the private sector in the country, nurses and pharmacists as well.
And you know, you're also a clinical dietitian, right?
Dietitian.
Okay, yeah. I said dietitian this time. You're also a clinical dietitian. Can we talk about you coming back into the kingdom of Eswatini, working here? Was it something that's accepted? Because when we think about diets, we think it's necessary to consult for your diet. At that time, coming back and working here, what were some of your experiences in your role?
So when I first came back from university, I worked for the Ministry of Health, and I was up in Mangayane, so I was the clinical dietitian at the hospital there. That for me was honestly a heartbreaking experience. It was heartbreaking in the sense that a lot of the patients that you worked with in that area struggled more with food insecurity. So you could come along and give them the best advice possible, but if this person tells you that I don't have food, I only have access to maize, and I just make it work. One day it's pap, the next day it will be a thin porridge. There's nothing, my skills don't extend that far. I'm here to give you the advice, but in terms of actually assisting with the food insecurity, I was clueless in that regard.
Can we now talk about how those experiences, you working as a medical delegate and of course a clinical dietitian, how has it now informed your current practice, KSD Dietetics? Like, how has it helped you in the establishment of the business and, you know, propelling it forward?
So working at Nestle, the beauty of working for Nestle was that I got exposure to a business environment, which when you're a healthcare professional, you're not always exposed to business, and the two need to coexist for you to actually build a thriving practice. So the first thing was that the exposure to business and understanding business basically at its foundation level. And the nice thing with Nestle as well is that it really exposed me to what's going on in the private sector of the country in terms of the medical, because like I said, I was working a lot with doctors, nurses, pharmacists. So a lot of them would actually, sometimes I'd tell them about the Nestle products, then they'd say, so I have a patient who's got condition X, Y, and Z, how can you advise me so that I go back and give them the information? And that was when I had the light bulb went off that dietitians are actually necessary. Because when I worked for Ministry of Health, I'd gotten to a point where I thought I shot myself in the foot by becoming a dietitian because I didn't see where we could possibly fit in the country. But moving over to Nestle, I realized that there is a role for dietitians, there is a place for dietitians even within the country. And if we're all sitting and we've got the same thought process that we've shot ourselves in the foot, who's going to help the people that actually do need that assistance? So basically those two experiences opened my eyes. So the Ministry of Health experience showed me, I saw what disease is actually doing to our people in the country. And working for Nestle showed me how I can actually make myself a significant part of the healthcare team.
And I think you probably have the most challenging profession when it comes to, because you need to get people to listen to you. And you know, they betray that consultation that you guys had. What are some of the challenges that you faced, you know, during your practice and your private practice, and how have you managed to, you know, resolve them?
I always say one of the biggest challenges with being a dietitian is no one comes to you because they're in pain.
Yes.
That's the tricky thing. So no one realizes how much they need you because there's no direct pain. And even when they feel pain somewhere, their first stop is the doctor's office. They're not thinking, there are very few people I've encountered who actually say, let me start with correcting my diet. And if it doesn't work, then I'll go to the doctor. So the first stop is always the doctor's office. You're not always the person that people think they can go to for help. Or in some cases, people tend to think that dietitians are more of a white. I've had people say that this is a white people thing, so why am I here? So one of the ways I've decided to tackle it is by increasing my social media presence. So I realized, okay, firstly, there aren't a lot of dietitians in the country. We're less than 10, of which 2 have even left and gone overseas for school. So I realized that we don't have a strong social media presence as dietitians in the country. And we do have a large population that actually uses social media. So I use my social media platform to share information so people get a feel of what it is a dietitian will tell you. Because there's also this misconception that dietitians tell me to eat the 3 food groups: carbs, protein, fat. And we do so much more than that. And then how I also tackle it is in the way I do my consultations. So I generally try not to be the dietitian where you walk in and I ask you, so what's wrong? What are you eating? You're eating terrible food. I really try and get to know people, which that's another area where Nestle actually helped me, because we used to get trained a lot on effective engagement skills. So I use those same skills within my consultation in the way that I address people. I look at them holistically and I basically try and make them feel seen in that session and address their issues, not in a judgmental way, but in a way where I'll actually get the outcome that we want at the end.
And what are some of the conditions that you've noticed or you've picked up on that are regular, you know, in some of your consultations, and how are you working to, you know, actively resolve those? When it comes to the engagement with your customer, how do you ensure that they keep up with the information that you give them? Do you call them every now and then and say, "Ukhumbule, eat your greens"? Like, how does it go?
So the conditions that I do, the most prevalent conditions in my practice are gut issues. So a lot of gastritis, peptic ulcer disease as well. So so that's what that's probably at the top, or basically matched with diabetes. So it's gut issues as well as diabetes. Those are the 2 prevalent conditions that I see the most. And then we've also got weight loss as well. So I also deal with a lot of people who are actually looking to work towards losing weight. And I basically implement a system of monitoring and evaluation where people have to come back for follow-ups. So initially, in the early days of my practice, I tried to do let me follow up with you on WhatsApp. It's not realistic. It's not.
Like, send me a picture of your food. You know, gym instructors do that.
But I do that with some of my patients, though, where if maybe we've hit a snag where we're struggling we've hit a wall somewhere, and I'm not understanding why we're still not getting the results, then I'll start asking for pictures of food just to gauge where things are actually going wrong. But because I know the demands I have on me as well, sometimes that's not the most practical way to go about it. But we definitely always schedule follow-ups as well. So depending on your progress and how things are going with the journey that we've started with you, you'll come in for a follow-up either once every 2 weeks or once every 4 weeks. People are different. So I found that's the best way, and also a way that I can maintain. I don't want to start something and then crash and burn halfway through it.
All righty. Thank you so much, Khumbuzile, for that one. You know, we're going to take a short ad break, but when we return, we just unpack how education, you know, continuous education is important in such a career, but that is only when we return. Continuing a beautiful conversation. Today's episode, we are joined by Khumbuzile Dlamini, who is a dietitian, a qualified dietitian, not self-made. So now we talk about education, the role that it has played in creating the person that you are, you know, especially continuous education, because you do not stop learning. Before we get into quote psychology part and how it, you know, integrates into your current practice and what you're doing now, can we talk about your postgraduate diploma in pediatric nutrition? Why would you go for that? You know, after you know completing everything, why did you want to focus on children, I would say?
I actually love working with children.
Yeah.
That is, when I was still at university, that was the one area where my star would actually shine. It just came innately to me, and I generally love working with children, because I always say if we can get nutrition right from childhood, then as humanity we're setting ourselves up for an even better path, because we reduce the risk of having an adult who's developed diabetes or an adult who's battling with severe allergies or high blood pressure as well. So generally I just love working with children, because I know that in 20 years, 30 years down the line, we will be on a better path as a society.
And also coach psychology, right? Psychological part, I feel like it plays a huge role into, you know, your diet as a person going, how has that helped you, you know, that part of your education? If you could just share where you did it and when you did it and how it's now merging into what you're doing and making it even better.
Okay, so the coaching psychology opportunity actually came through my psychologist. So I am a big believer in mental health and ensuring that you care for your mental health. So I've been working with Celeste for the last 3 years to make sure that my mental health is also at a good place. Because, you know, I work day to day with people. You're sharing everything, your life with me. So I don't go to my therapist and talk about people's lives. That's where I just go to debrief. So so Celeste has been working with a university in London called Al Roy, and she was the one who said that she was the one who told me about the opportunity to actually study coaching psychology. So it was an online course. It was an online diploma that took 6 months. So thank God for COVID, everything now happens remotely. And it's had a big impact on how I actually conduct my consultations, because I often say nutrition information is widely available, sometimes not the most accurate, but we all have a general idea of what we need to do. Eat your greens, eat your fruits, drink your water, but we're all struggling with it. So where's the struggle coming from? And I believe that the struggle is mostly mental. So I took on the coaching psychology to help strengthen me in the mental health area and how I offer my service. But of course, where I see that, okay, this patient, the mental health issues they're facing are beyond my scope, I refer you to a clinical psychologist in that case. So it's just made me a better dietitian, because now I'm able to couple the mental side with the nutrition side.
And you know, I like that you speak about that, because it leads me to my next question, which is how do you work in collaboration with other healthcare professionals to make sure that, you know, your clients are successful in the things that they do? Because sometimes pain is pain, you understand. But can we talk about that, the collaboration and an example of successful teamwork that you've done?
Teamwork is important in the health sector. No one person is equipped with the skills to do everything. So within the health sector, there is something called a scope of practice. So you have to know where your skills start and where your skills actually end. So so how I work is I will look into other potential areas where you might need someone to assist you. So I'll look at the medical side, because for whatever reason, we don't like going to hospitals for medicals. Or people are not aware, shame as well. So I look at the medical side to see when last did you actually make sure you had a medical checkup done by a doctor. We'll tap into the mental health side. And if I see that those areas are lacking, I will generally refer people to actually go and see someone who's better equipped to help them in that particular area. So I never try to be a superstar. We basically always refer. And I have quite a few examples where teamwork has actually has gotten us the desired results and great outcomes. So normally, so since I'm based in Bavane Clinic, a lot of my patients will also come from the doctors that I'm in proximity to. So they'll normally send patients when they say they've done their assessment and they've picked up that perhaps their blood pressure is elevated or their blood sugar is now too high and we need to get it under control. So in working in collaboration with the doctor, I want to list a specific example, but because there's too many of them. So in working with the doctor and myself and sometimes a psychologist, we generally do get people out of that danger zone where we help them basically improve their health. Yeah.
And you know, apart from formal education, what else has equipped you for your journey in the private sector? Because you can learn all you want, but we're moving with times, we're moving with trends, and you know, you always need to keep yourself well equipped and moving up to the times.
Yeah, absolutely. So recently I've realized the importance of self-development. So in as much as I have a degree that qualifies me as a dietitian, that was just basically the first step in this journey. So I've come to realize that outside of the academics, your self-development and your self-mastery is incredibly important. That determines how far a person can actually go. So in that, again, I've worked with the life coach. I will get a coach for anything if need be. I honestly, I know my strengths and my weaknesses. So I know, and I'm here to hold people accountable. And I also have that same weakness where I need to be held accountable myself. So I also get coaches where I need them to actually help, because I need someone who can basically act as my mirror, so that they show me that, Khumbu, you're missing it here, or Khumbu, you're nailing it here. So self-development, self-mastery, that has become a very important part of my life, because I realize that if I don't have a strong sense of self, I can only help a person to a certain point, and then I'll fail. Or if there's a bad season that we have within the practice, because quiet seasons come, then you start to take it personally, and you think, oh, clearly I might be failing as a dietitian, or the practice is not doing well. So you need to develop that mental resilience as well to see you through. And of course, there's also the continuous professional development, which we have to do as healthcare professionals. Because the information changes, and the information I knew last year is completely different this year. So you also have to make sure that you're staying updated, so that your clients are getting the best advice possible.
I like speaking with people like you because you're motivated and you see the bigger picture. And you know, you being thrown into a pit where you realize that there was a problem, how do you hope to then solve it in the future?
That's a long term. So yeah, basically what my long-term goal is to basically collaborate with other organizations. I'm very open to collaboration. I believe no one man can do anything on their own. We need to work together to actually achieve our goals for the greater good. So I am working on ensuring that my practice is actually well positioned for collaboration, which long-term can solve all the larger issues that we have as a society, you know, our food insecurity, non-communicable diseases. Because I'm running as a one-man army at the moment, but the hope is that with time I'll have partners that I can work with. We've got a big NGO presence in the country. So I'm hoping dietitians will also take up spaces in that sector as well, because I see that I see that within a lot of NGOs, there's barely any dietitians who are actually employed. So I'm hoping that dietitians will eventually take up space in that sector and also take up their rightful positioning in the public sector, so that ultimately all these sectors come together and we can work towards solving the food insecurity, reducing the burden of non-communicable diseases. Because even as Eswatini, we're not left out of that. We're also feeling the pinch of non-communicable diseases, and they are just basically taking us out one by one, unfortunately.
And what I love about you the most is that you do actually offer your services for free somehow, because you're a very interactive person on social media. You exercise, and most importantly, you write on the newspaper. Guys, people just keep pages, and that is where they can grasp all of that information. Can you just tell us about your other interactive spaces where you just share a piece of yourself with our people?
Social media at the moment is my biggest interactive space, and I love sharing information with people. If I can help you, if you can get the best outcome for yourself, then I'm always more than happy to do that. And I love that social media basically has, how can I put it? What I enjoy the most about these certain spaces, specifically social media, is that it reaches people in other parts of the world, not just Eswatini. And my goal is to have an impact globally, not just within Eswatini. But of course, Eswatini is my baby. I see it. Yeah, no, it's my home. So it means for me, it's close to my heart to ensure that I have an impact nutritionally even within Eswatini as well.
Yeah. And just as we wrap up, what advice would you give to a young person who might be considering, who just watched this, has been watching this episode and gained interest, you know, in your respective field? What advice would you give to them starting now? How can they research? Can they ask you any questions on the DMs, Nyana?
Yeah.
But what advice would you give to an aspiring dietitian?
I'd like to say, firstly, this profession is not for the faint of heart. You need to be self-motivated, because we live in a world where, unfortunately, everyone now has a platform courtesy of social media. So you'll find the ordinary man starting to share nutrition information as if it's a scientific fact.
Yeah.
And normally the voice of the dietitian is the smallest one. You know, I've had people ask me that, why are you telling me to eat this way when Google said intermittent fasting is the way? And I'm thinking, but why would you want to punish yourself when I am giving you a more sustainable approach to it? So you really have to be you have to be resilient and extremely self-motivated as well in this profession. And you need to be willing to do the dirty work. Because it's, especially in Eswatini, it's not a profession that is widely recognized yet. So which is part of the reason I also share information on social media, so that people gain a recognition and appreciation for dietetics within this field.
Yeah.
And so that's within the real world. Now, once you've qualified. And studying dietetics is also not for the faint of heart. It is a grueling program.
Yeah.
It's 4 years. So you can't go to university and tell yourself you'll party your way through it. You're going to fail. So you need to put your head down and work, because you have to master nutrition is broad. So even within university, you are tackling various subject matters within a 4-year period. So you've got, just to give you an overview of it, you have to master 3 fields within dietetics by the time you've qualified. So it takes a lot of work, and you spend the first 2 years of the degree also doing BSc modules primarily. So you have to tackle physics and chemistry before you move over into the nutrition related subject matters. So it's also more for, you'll do well if you are willing to put your head down and do the work within this profession. But anything's possible if you want it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Khumbuzile, for joining us. You know, we could unpack so many stories when it comes to nutrition and diet and, you know, the beautiful work that you do. We just hope that you break into the global space and that you continue to give back to our very small community with the work that you do. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that was Khumbuzile Dlamini. Please do follow her on social media. It'll definitely be beneficial to you. And if you buy that newspaper, just page through. She is always there. But other than that, a big thank you to the Mbabane Library for hosting us today. That is where we got to interact and have our beautiful conversation. Apart from that, you know, I have to love, I have to leave you. But I'll be back again next week, Tuesday, 6:30, unpacking another inspiring story in the Kingdom of Eswatini for you. But tonight it is good night and God bless.